So, have you ever stopped to wonder how we even begin to make sense of the wild, complex world we live in? I mean, social scientists grapple with this every single day, and trust me, they don't all agree on the best way to do it. It's like they're all looking at the same picture, but through totally different lenses, or what they call paradigms, that shape everything they see. Today, we're going to look through these different lenses, from the super scientific to the really critical, to see the unique picture each one paints of our social reality. All right, so here's our game plan. Before we dive into the big isms you see here, like positivism and critical theory, we first have to get a handle on the two fundamental questions that every single researcher has to answer. These are, the building blocks. Once we've got those down, we'll take a journey through each of these major paradigms and see how they've evolved over time. It's a pretty fascinating story of how our ideas have changed.
Okay, think about this for a second. It's so simple, right? When someone smiles at you, your brain instantly starts working. Are they happy? Are they just being polite? Uh-oh, do they want something from me? These tiny, everyday interactions and the assumptions we make about them are exactly what social science tries to understand. And each paradigm we're about to talk about offers a completely different way to analyze that simple smile.
So, to analyze that smile, a researcher first has to decide what reality they're even studying. I mean, is society a real, concrete structure that exists out there, totally independent of us? Or is it something we all create together through our beliefs and interactions? This huge choice about the fundamental nature of reality, that's called ontology. It's the absolute first building block for any kind of research.
Okay, so once you've decided what you think reality is, the next question is pretty logical. How can we possibly know anything about it? This how question, that's epistemology. It's all about the methods. Do we use objective tools like big surveys and statistics to find the truth? Or do we need to actually immerse ourselves in people's lives using interviews and observation? This choice is the second crucial building block.
All right, with those building blocks in place, let's look at our first major paradigm, positivism. Now, this was the original attempt to make studying society just as rigorous and objective as sciences like, say, physics or biology. Positivists see society as a kind of external machine that operates according to fixed laws, almost like the law of gravity. Their whole goal is to discover these laws so they can predict human behavior. For a positivist, knowledge has to be based on hard, measurable facts. If you can't see it and measure it, it's just not scientific data. The researcher is supposed to be like a scientist in a lab coat, observing from a distance, totally neutral, and not letting their own opinions get in the way. But, it didn't take long for other thinkers to start pushing back against that. They basically said, hold on a minute. Studying human beings with all their messy thoughts and feelings and intentions is fundamentally different from studying molecules or planets. And this idea is what led to the rise of interpretivism. And this chart just lays out the core conflict perfectly. On one hand, you have positivism, which argues for an external reality that a detached researcher can observe. But interpretivism flips this completely. It argues that reality is socially constructed through our shared meanings. From this perspective, the researcher can't possibly be detached. They're a part of the very world they're trying to study. So the goal shifts from finding universal laws to trying to understand subjective meaning from the inside out. Okay, let's keep going because the story builds. The next major paradigm came along and argued that both positivists and interpretivists were missing a huge piece of the puzzle: power. Critical theorists said it's not enough to just observe or interpret the world. You have to ask why the world is the way it is, especially when it's so obviously unequal or unjust. Critical theorists believe that social reality is kind of like an iceberg. On the surface, you have what we see every day, our common sense reality. But beneath that surface, there are these huge hidden structures, mechanisms of power, inequality, and exploitation that are the real forces shaping our lives. So the goal for critical researcher isn't just to study these structures, it's to expose them, to make them visible, in order to empower people, and ultimately to change society for the better. Now, a really powerful example of critical theory in action is the feminist approach. This paradigm takes that critical lens and applies it to one of the most fundamental power structures in any society: gender. This quote just gets right to the heart of the feminist critique. I mean, for centuries, research was almost exclusively done by men, from a male perspective. And this didn't just ignore women, it basically normalized a male point of view as the default for all of humanity. The feminist approach fundamentally challenges this. It's not just about adding women to existing research, it's about using gender as a primary lens to uncover those hidden power dynamics and work towards real emancipation.
All right, our final section covers two related but distinct paradigms that take the critique even further: postmodernism and postcolonialism. These don't just question the answers other theories give, they question the very idea that we can find one single definitive truth at all. Let's kick it off with postmodernism.
So this is the central question that postmodernism forces us to really wrestle with. Think about it. All the previous paradigms, in their own way, believed that their research could lead to a better, more accurate explanation of social reality. But what if there is no single truth out there to be found? And this is why postmodernism is so radical. It rejects what it calls grand narratives. Any single theory, whether it's about progress or science or religion, that claims to explain everything for everyone. Instead of one truth with a capital T, postmodernists see a world of multiple competing truths and perspectives. They'd argue that science is just one story about the world, not the only one. Now, building on that same critique of singular truths, postcolonialism applies a similar lens, but it focuses specifically on the power dynamics left behind by colonialism. And this quote just captures the core issue perfectly. For centuries, what we called knowledge about the world was produced almost exclusively by Western colonial powers. They were the subjects who did the knowing, while the people and cultures they colonized were treated as passive objects, just to be studied and defined. Postcolonialism works to dismantle this legacy by challenging that Eurocentric dominance and championing knowledge from formerly marginalized voices. So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, it's not about choosing a single best lens. It's much better to think of them as a toolkit. Positivism gives you a telescope to see broad societal patterns. Interpretivism gives you a microscope to understand individual meaning. Critical theories give you a kind of X-ray to see the hidden power structures. And postmodernism is there to remind you that every single tool has its limits.
And that leaves us with a final thought. Now that you know about these different lenses, you can start to see them everywhere. So the next time you read a research study, or even just a news story, ask yourself, what assumptions are they making about reality? How are they trying to know what they know? And most importantly, what might they be missing because of the particular lens they've chosen to use?